Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Who's ready?
Throw Punch Thursday, bitch.
Gotta love this stuff. Gotta love this stuff. I'm going to figure out something is going on between Wirecast and Restream. And it's funny because it used to always happen at the end of the program, but now it seems to be happening at the beginning of the program where it just freezes up, just stops. Decide I'm going to stop, but then it starts working again. And once it gets back working, it's all good. So anyway, if any of y'all out there have experience with either Wirecast or Restream and might have an idea, please feel free to hit me up in the DM. I would love to figure this thing out because Lord knows I've talked to Restream, I've talked to Wirecast. Neither one of them can seem to figure it out. And they get paid to figure this sort of stuff out. Anyway, that's okay though, because we're here, I'm here, you're here. We're going to have a great conversation. Unfortunately, Mike is not going to be able to be here. Mike is off earning a living. Like he's got bills to pay or something like that. Anyway, but like I said, I'm here, you're here. We're going to have a conversation. If you're watching the program live right now, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're taking your comments on YouTube, on Facebook, on Rumble. Would love to hear what you have to say about the program. Well, we've had been kind of cool. We've had folks the last couple of days actually chiming in and having some good conversations. So looking forward to a lot more of that coming up. But before we can do that, we got to do what we got to do and, pay the bills. And that starts with a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries, rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase. If you've purchased an AR in the last few years, chances are you already have one of their barrels because they are very, very popular. You know how good they are. So whether you're looking to rebarrel an old rifle or you're looking to do a brand new build, check them out at hitmanindustries.net today. Once again, rifle and pistol caliber barrels available at any length. Then we've got the California Republican Assembly working to help elect conservatives at all level of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Ronald Reagan once referred to CRA as the conscience of the Republican Party. You need to check them out today. Just go to cragop.org. That's cragop.org. If you want to be a part of California's future today, you got to join CRA. Let's see. Next we've got Hog holsters, the best in concealed carry holsters available on the market. All you got to do is go to hogholsters.com. That's hogholsters.com, HAWG holsters.com. Make sure you use the discount code, The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, one word. Get your Hog holster today. And then finally, if you have a group, right? Let's say you're a part of a shooting club, or maybe you're a purchaser for your department, or maybe for your military unit. You need to check out uscombatgear.com. They have a huge selection of gear. They have they have the most competitive prices that are available out there, and let me tell you, the best customer service. Go to uscombatgear.com and check them out today. It's a place where you can find all things tactical except the gun. All right, let's get into today's news. And we're going to start with a couple of really big news stories, or at least big Supreme Court stories. And here's the reason why they're big, because they're on controversial issues. And yet the Supreme Court ruled 9-0. That means in both of these cases that we're about to talk about, these are, once again, big time controversial issues. And the Supreme Court, meaning even the liberal justices, ruled with the conservative justices, with the constitutional justices on these particular cases. And once again, that is definitely something worth paying attention to. The first case we're going to talk about has to do with discrimination, or rather, well, they want to say reverse discrimination, but really it's discrimination, because the Constitution makes it very clear. You are not allowed. By the way, civil rights law also makes it so you are not allowed to discriminate against someone based on their race, based on their gender, based on their religion, based on what they call immutable characteristics, right? Well, that in many, many cases has kind of been the law, except if you are part of the majority. If you've been part of the majority, meaning if you are a white male or you happen to be Christian, there was an additional burden placed upon you. In other words, you just weren't able to just sue just because you were being discriminated. If you were a white man being discriminated against because you are a white man, you were not allowed to sue. I mean, you were, in many cases, there was an extra burden that was placed upon you before you could file a lawsuit. Well, a woman who was very frustrated because she had lost her. Well, you know what? Let me read the story to you. And I'm going to read it from the Associated Press. So it'll kind of give you the flavor that they're coming at it with. It says here, Supreme Court makes it easier to claim reverse discrimination in employment and in a case from Ohio. Now, mind you, they're still calling it reverse discrimination, but it's not reverse discrimination. It is just discrimination. A unanimous Supreme Court made it clear Thursday to bring lawsuits over so-called reverse discrimination, siding with an Ohio woman who claims she didn't get a job and then was demoted because she was straight. The justice's decision affects lawsuits in 20 states and in the District of Columbia, where until now courts had set a higher bar when members of the majority group, including those who are white and heterosexual, sue for discrimination under federal law. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote for the court that federal civil rights law draws no distinction between members of majority and minority groups. Quote, by establishing the same protections for every individual without regard to that individual's membership in a minority or majority group, Congress left no room for courts to impose special requirements on majority group plaintiffs alone, Jackson wrote. Now, that's an important distinction because here's the thing, what she's really saying here is she's not saying that she doesn't wish it were that way, right? In other words, she's not saying that she doesn't wish it were that way. She's saying, look, we've got no choice. Because they didn't, when they wrote the law, say that, yeah, well, it's not really discrimination if you're part of the majority group. They made no distinction. They said you can't discriminate based on race. That's the law. That's what they said. Or you can't discriminate based on gender or gender identity. Now, mind you, this is a white woman we're talking about who did not get a job, a particular job, because she was a woman, because she was a white woman. I don't know if because she's a woman or white woman or a woman, but she lost out to a person who didn't have nearly the experience or nearly the resume, who happened to be LGBTQ. Then once she was demoted, once she didn't get that position, she was then demoted and replaced by another person who was LGBTQ. Now, they're not saying in this decision in the Supreme Court, they're not saying that was the reason why she both didn't get the promotion and why she lost her job. What they said was she has a right to sue. She doesn't have a higher burden to prove just so that she can file the lawsuit. And by the way, I'm going to sit here and tell you, based on what Justice Jackson Brown said, I'm assuming the same thing is said that when it comes to the actual proving of the case. Now, she has to prove that it was because they were trying to replace a heterosexual woman or heterosexual with a homosexual. That's what they're going to have to prove, or with someone who's LGBTQ. That's going to be her burden of proof, but at least now she gets to make that case in court. Something that she wasn't allowed to do previously. And this opens up, I'm going to tell you right now, this opens up a lot of things. Because that right now, there are lawsuits right now that are going forward, in particular from people who are white, from individuals who are white and individuals who are Chinese or Asian, of Asian descent, when it comes to acceptance into colleges and universities. And they're going to find out really, really quick that just because you happen to be part of an overrepresented group does not mean that they can discriminate against you. That these lawsuits are going to move forward. Anyway, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how these things go. But like I said, what is encouraging about this is this was a 9-0 decision. 9-0, meaning every single member of the Supreme Court agreed. And as much as I held absolutely no faith, I had no faith in Sotomayor. I had no faith in Kagan. I had no faith in Ketanji Brown Jackson because, once again, in their eyes, their job is to right wrongs as they see it, not necessarily to rule according to the law. But in this particular case, they ruled according to the law. They made a decision based on what the law says. And I'll just say hats off to them. I'm very, very happy with that. I'm very, very happy that they did that, and I will give them all the credit where credit is due. Anyway, now the other case that was decided had to do with firearms. That's right. You have a group of people out there who are suing based on firearms. And who is that group of people? That group of people would happen to be the Mexican government. That's right. The Mexican government was suing gun manufacturers or firearms manufacturers uh, for basically violence that's taking place there in Mexico. Now, let's forget the fact that, Mexico being run by cartels might have more to do with the amount of guns and gang violence than firearms do. But once again, their argument is that, well, you made these guns and now these guns are being used, so therefore we ought to get to sue you. Well, the Supreme Court has basically said, no, you do not get to sue our firearms manufacturers. And it's being reported by the BBC. Once again, wanted to give you even the liberals' take from it. It says Supreme Court rejects Mexico lawsuit against U.S. gun makers. It says here, U.S. Supreme Court has blocked a lawsuit brought by Mexico that sought to hold American gun makers accountable for playing a role in the country's struggle with drug cartels. The court voted 9-0 to reject the lawsuit, in the process upholding a 2005 law that shields gun manufacturers from liability if the weapons they produce are misused. Mexico's government had argued that the flood of illegal guns across the border is a result of deliberate practices by U.S. firms that they say appealed to cartel members with their products. The decision overturns a lower court's ruling that allowed the suit brought against manufacturer Smith & Wesson and wholesaler Interstate Arms to proceed. Mexico's original lawsuit was filed in 2021 against 8 gun manufacturers, but the case against 6 of them were dismissed by a district court. The Supreme Court has now rejected the suit in its entirety, agreeing the case satisfied an exemption to the Protection of Lawful Commerce Act of Lawful Commerce of Arms Act, which limits the the liability of gun manufacturers. In its complaint, the Mexican government argued that the gun manufacturers, quote, supply arms to retail dealers whom they know legally sell to Mexican gun traffickers. It also claimed that the manufacturers did not impose any controls on their distribution networks to prevent the sale of these weapons to traffickers in Mexico. Now, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what was it that they expected Smith and Wesson to do. They can tell them, look, the firearms retailers know what the law is. They know who they can sell them to and who they cannot sell them to. And if they are selling them to anybody who is illegal, if they're knowingly sell them to straw purchasers who are then trafficking them to Mexico, well then that's on the retailer, and the retailer needs to be held accountable. I don't disagree with that. But once again, it comes down to knowingly. Now, if you go and you look through, if you listen to anybody who's looked through ATF records, they can tell you that when it comes to firearms that are trafficked illegally, the number of firearms retailers that are actually involved, or where the number of firearms, at least, I guess mostly what I know about are the ones here in the United States that are found being used illegally. The ones that tend to be trafficked or used as, or let's say a straw person who bought for someone who they knew wasn't really allowed to buy guns, or they bought it so that it could then be sold and trafficked or whatever. Um, there's only a handful of retailers. And when I say a handful, I mean a small number ATF could investigate and go after those folks, and for some reason they've decided not to. I don't know why they haven't. Instead, in particular, under Biden administration, they decided to go after retailers for minor paperwork errors. And when I say minor, I mean really minor. Used to be paperwork errors that if you made a mistake, you're cited and you're given a call. You're given a corrective action, meaning you can correct it and keep your license. In what they've decided to do, or at least it started with Obama, it was paused under Trump during his first term in office, but then restarted again during the Biden administration. Was they literally were going after and seeking to remove the federal firearms licenses of retailers once again for minor paperwork errors, because their attitude is, well, the fewer people there are selling firearms, the fewer people that will be buying firearms, because their eyes was, you may have a constitutional right to own a firearm, but you do not have a constitutional right to sell firearms. That was their position. Well, in this particular case, once again, the Supreme Court said 9-0, 9-0, that the Lawful Commerce in Arms Act does in fact apply. And it is protected. And contrary to what anti-gunners or the gun grabbers or the left will have you believe, they have the same degree of liability. When I say that, I mean firearms retailers, firearms manufacturers, those in the firearms industry. They have the same level of liability as anybody else. If someone stole a car, or if someone bought a car and then went out and drove drunk in that car, the manufacturer of that car would not be sued. That would be considered a frivolous lawsuit, right? If someone bought some Cutco knives and then they took those Cutco knives out and went to stab people, Cutco would not then be held liable for them going out and stabbing people. Now, if something broke on the knife, or if something happened and the brakes didn't work on the car and it wound up plowing into people because it was a faulty product, or because there was something wrong with it, that's a whole different story. If they broke the law in either manufacturing or selling the product, then yes, they could be held accountable. Even now, even under the Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, they could be held liable. But that's not going to be the case here. That's not the case here. They just want to sue them because, well, they want to put them out of business. See, they realize once again, they can't take away our right to own a firearm, but they can take away a business's right to sell that firearm, in particular by trying to put them out of business. And these lawsuits almost never win. But keep in mind that these companies don't have the deep pockets that, say, a Michael Bloomberg does. I mean, we're talking billionaires fund the anti-gun movement. Billionaires, not millionaires. Well, yeah, millionaires, yes, but billionaires. The gun rights movement, it's largely funded by me and you. It's funded $50 donations at a time. And once again, I can't bring this up enough. The reason why we have the rights that we do is because groups like the Firearms Policy Coalition, like the Second Amendment Foundation, like Gun Owners of America, go out and sue. And the only reason they can sue is because of you. You kick down cash to them. You kick down a few bucks here and a few bucks there to protect your rights, and they go out and they protect your rights. So make sure, if you haven't done it lately, make sure you go out and do that. And by the way, give our Supreme Court justices, even the liberal ones, give them a little bit of an attaboy. I know. Should you really give them an attaboy for doing their job? Well, considering the fact that most of the time you can't count on Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, and every once in a while you can count on Chief Justice John Roberts to do his job. But the very fact that they did their job and they did so unanimously, I think is worth an attaboy. So give it up, folks. Give it up. Give it up. Give them some love. Give them some love. All right. All right. This one I find interesting. So we all know that the big, beautiful bill is not the best bill. I mean, Elon Musk, once he was no longer owed to government, no longer part of the Trump administration, not because Trump didn't like him, not because they didn't get along, but simply because 130 days was the longest he could work as an unpaid, unofficial, non-official official, we'll call it. Anyway, But on his way out, he made it a point. Look, the big beautiful bill is a bad bill, and when he says a bad bill, he's talking from the perspective of someone who's like, look, we've got a lot of we've got a lot of major issues with our spending, and we've got to figure out a way to reduce spending. The true reality of the big beautiful bill is that it limits spending, meaning it doesn't dramatically increase spending. Well, when I say dramatically, over they say over 10 years it'll increase the deficit about $2 trillion. So that's what they say. Over a decade, who knows what's going to wind up changing with the stuff that's in the bill, because nothing that this Congress does obliges the next Congress to do it. But the one thing that they wanted to make sure that they did was get the tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts from his first administration. They wanted to make sure that those were made permanent. And that's an important thing to understand, because tax cuts are not spending. Let me say that again. Tax cuts are not spending, right? Allowing people who pay taxes to keep their money is not spending. The money that they earned, that is not spending. That may affect revenue, may or may not, because sadly, when we analyze these budgets, we do it in kind of, I think it's called a static form, meaning we're not allowed to take a look at the positive economic impact that tax cuts have on the economy, because tax cuts spur growth. And we've seen that when there have been major tax cuts, whether it was John F. Kennedy doing it, whether it was Ronald Reagan doing it, or whether it was Trump when he first put these tax cuts in place, when you cut taxes, revenue goes up. So far, we've seen it. History has not proven wrong. But when analyzing this stuff, it's considered static, so you're not allowed to consider that. But anyway, but they want to consider that spending. So part of the thing was, the most important thing about the big beautiful bill is that it makes those things permanent. The other thing that it does is that it does make some cuts around the edges, right? In other words, it controls the growth of spending. So in other words, they're not actually spending less, they're spending less than they projected to spend, or increase. They're increasing less than they projected to increase. I know that doesn't make you feel very good. If we had a large majority in the House, if we had, like, for example, a 60 vote majority or a 40 vote majority, then you could afford, because here's the deal, folks. I'm just going to be real with you. It's not a majority of Republicans who made it so that this happened. It's a handful of Republicans who wanted to get some pork, who wanted to get some stuff for them, either themselves or their district, right? But they're the ones who wound up making it so that this bill is the way that it is, because it was the only way to get it out of the House. Democrats were not going to support it no matter what, because it was Republican. Let's just be real. No matter what, they were not going to support it. So now it's over. Now it's over in the Senate. And the Senate is basically saying, Senate Republicans are saying, hold up, wait a minute. Yeah, we're going to need to see some more cuts in this thing. In fact, they are challenging the White House to make $2 trillion in spending cuts, or at least that was the conversation. As being reported by Axios, key Senate Republicans strategized with President Trump on how to cut spending deeper than the House-passed budget bill, and pressed him to make his proposed business tax cuts permanent. Let's go down here. Tell you what, I'll read right here. It says here, why it matters. Failure is not an option, Senate Majority Leader John Thune told reporters after the hour and a half meeting Wednesday. We're going to cut some more money from what the House has done, Senator Rogers Marshall told Axios. Quote, can we get to $2 trillion? Do we make it? Or do we make all those business tax provisions permanent or not? He said. I think those are big issues. Continuing, or this is another quote. We had a very robust and hopeful discussion with the president today. Finance Chair Mike Crapo told reporters. In other words, what they're saying is, we're going to look at making more cuts. And this was one of the things that I wanted to tell people as they were losing their minds about this was this is just the opening salvo. This was just to get it initially out of the House. This was so that people, in particular, some of those Republicans, could go on the record as, as being against it, right? As being against this bill, which doesn't cut deep enough. Now the Senate is going to take a whack at some of this. And by the way, the one thing that is not an option, these tax cuts needs to go through. And when I say tax cuts, once again, I'm not talking about brand new tax cuts. These are cuts that are basically that are already in existence that are going to be made permanent. If they do not, then you are looking at a huge tax increase. Let me say that again. If the Trump tax cuts are not made permanent, if the tax cuts in the big, beautiful bill are not made permanent, then you will be looking at a tax increase. Anyone who voted against the big, beautiful bill voted for a tax increase. Now, you're going to have the left who's going to tell you this is it's a transfer of wealth from the poorest of the poor to the wealthy. Well, one, let's be very clear. Allowing someone to keep the money that they've earned is not a transfer of wealth. What you are preventing is a redistribution of wealth. And when I say redistribution, I mean taking from those who've earned to give to those who haven't. And by the way, who are those who have earned? Me and you. I mean, as much as the left wants to lie, look, everybody who paid taxes saw a tax cut. I know that at the time when they went through, I was working, and I saw at the time about a $200 a month difference in my take-home pay. Now, for some of y'all, that may not be a whole lot of money. And by the way, I'm not wealthy. I wasn't earning a huge amount of money. I was doing all right? I wasn't wealthy by any standards, very, very middle class. But $200 a month was a lot. $200 a month made a big difference for me. And I bet you it did for a lot of folks. Anybody who paid taxes saw a reduction. So don't let the left lie to you. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, though. The definition of a tax cut means if you pay taxes, you get a cut. You pay less. You get to keep more. The more you pay, the more you get to keep. That's kind of how tax cuts work. For people who sit there and say that they want to give tax cuts to the poor, well, let's be honest. The bottom 50% of Americans don't pay federal taxes. Or if they do, they get it back through all of their deductions at the end of the year. And those are just the numbers from the IRS. They don't pay federal income tax. They don't have to because there are so many exemptions. So, I'm sorry. Y'all have lost me. Y'all have lost me. Why are you continuing to lie about this? Anyway, it's going to be very interesting. I still do, because here's the thing. We need to see some major cuts. But I'm going to be honest. Whatever cuts we do see, we're not going to see anywhere near the $2 trillion. Because, and I'm just going to be frank with you, the biggest issue that we have right now when it comes to spending is it's entitlements. And it is the massive increase in entitlement spending. And until we have some sort of entitlement reform, until we start to take a look at how we deal with and how we address entitlements, we're talking, when you add the entitlements to the other mandatory spending, which includes the interest on the budget or the interest on the debt, you're looking at well over 50% of the budget. Well over. Some numbers I've seen over 60%. You cannot make substantive changes or substantive cuts or reduce spending if you're not willing to address those things. Now, they are attempting to do that when it comes to waste, fraud, and abuse. And when the left talks about waste, fraud, and abuse, they seem to think that providing free health care to able-bodied adults who are not head of households, um, who are able to work but refuse to work, they seem to think that that's not abuse. I happen to believe that that is abuse. They seem to think that allowing individuals who are claiming who want to be on the government dole in multiple states, that that's not abuse or fraud. By definition, it's waste and fraud. Or if they're taking advantage of two different government programs like Obamacare and they're taking advantage of Medicaid. I'm sorry, that's abuse. I don't understand I don't understand how that is not abuse. If you are able to work and you choose not to work, then why should I pay for your health care? Explain this to me. No children are going to be removed from health care because of this, because of the changes in Medicaid. No senior citizens are going to lose their health care. Nobody who is unable to work, right? If you can't find a job, all you got to do is go and volunteer 20 hours a week. Hey, I can tell you, there's a school probably right down the street from you that would be love to have you come down and read to the kids. I'm sure there's a park that could use some cleanup, but no, you're not going to do that. You don't want to do that because, well, that would just make too much sense. That would be just too much like right. And here's the thing: it's because the left seems to think that everybody who is on these programs actually rightfully deserves to be on it. And the reality is, the people who are on the program are the people who can figure out the bureaucracy to get on the program. That's what it is. It's not based on need, it's based on your ability to fill out paperwork. I know that's sad. I know people don't want to hear that, but it is the truth. All right. We've heard all the arguments about Democrats and from Democrats, and they're arguing for illegal immigration. They've talked who's going to pick the vegetables. Well, this is an interesting one because this is a Vermont Democrat who is catching a lot of flack right now because, well, her argument is, well, not only should they be picking our vegetables, but there's other work that they should be performing.
Labor, and of course, we have to come to a place in Congress where it is no longer a political issue, but we see it as an existential issue for the country. If we don't have avenues for people to come here legally to work or to build a home here, I'm going to be really crude right now. We're not going to have anybody around to wipe our asses because we don't have enough people.
Yeah. So, just so you know, if you are coming here from a foreign country, just know that if the Democrats are in charge, they got a job for you. That job ain't going to be driving. That job is not going to be working in hospitality. No college programs for you, or maybe they do. But in exchange for all of that, you're going to have a few asses to wipe. Yeah. I want you to hear their argument. Now let's be frank. We do have a population growth issue here in the United States. Every single Western nation does. In that we are not having enough children. We are not replacing ourselves. I think the numbers say that you're supposed to have somewhere around 2.3 to 2.5 children per couple in order to just simply replace yourself. Well, following the baby boomer generation and now Gen X, our replacement rate is somewhere around 1.6, meaning a lot of families are having one kid, a lot of families are having two kids, but nobody's really competent. In other words, we're not having enough children in order. So what you're starting to see is fewer and fewer people who are working, right? To provide to fund the social welfare benefits that we have given to those who don't work, because there are a lot of people who are coming here and who live here, by the way, who are refusing to work. Yes, we have a lot of people who live here who are refusing to work, and their hope is that these illegal immigrants will come across and that they will take some of those jobs. But the other thing is because we can't afford to necessarily pay people fair wages and market. We won't. Oh, let me clarify. We refuse to pay people fair wages, according to them, that to wipe our asses. That we need to have illegal workers come across the country to wipe our asses. That's what they seem to be arguing. For those of you who are taking this out of context, because I know some of y'all out there would just love to take what I'm saying out of context, but that's what they're saying. That is exactly what Democrats are saying. We need an underclass of people. These are Democrats' arguments. Democrats are arguing that we need an underclass of people to do the jobs that Americans won't do for what Americans are willing to pay. And the reality is that we Americans, and by the way, we Americans need to wake up to the fact that if we fully address and wholly address the issue of illegal immigration, costs are going to go up, because once you get to the point where you're no longer able to abuse folks who come to this country illegally, they have to improve their working conditions and improve their pay and actually bring it up to market rate and market value. Number one, Americans will start doing those jobs, so we won't need illegal immigration. But number two, that means also that costs go up because business pass costs onto the consumer. They do. They don't pass them all on. They eat some of it, but they generally pass the cost increases on to the consumer, in part or in whole. And that's a real thing. And y'all better be okay. We people, those of us who are advocates for legal immigration, we need to believe that. We need to be a part of it. And by the way, because Trump has done such a good job of securing the border, now is really probably the time to start to take a look at how do we revise and how do we fix our immigration system so that we can have people who we want to come here legally to do some of these jobs, to be able to come here. And we can now decide how we want that to look. Once again, we didn't have to pass a bunch of laws in order to fix the border. But we do need to possibly think about how we improve our immigration system. I can tell you, as a man whose wife immigrated here and had to deal with, she dealt with a lot of stuff. And it's not an easy system. I'll just tell you right now. It's not an easy thing to get here legally. It's a legal thing, but it's not that it ain't necessarily easy, and it ain't necessarily cheap. So maybe we need to look at how we address that. And by the way, we have a right to decide who comes here and who doesn't. We do. Nobody is entitled. Nobody has a right to be here in the United States unless you were born here. Unless it's a right granted to you by our Constitution. How about that? All right. Okay, moving right along. That's now going to bring us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, one word, just like it is right there, and you will get a discount on your Hog Holster today. All right, we're going to start off with a couple of these from the Babylon Bee. You might know that Elon Musk and Donald Trump, now that Elon Musk is no longer here, he's no longer with the administration, and a lot of people are sad about that. None more than them, because people hate to see a breakup. And as is reported by the folks over at the Babylon Bee, judge determined Trump will get the nation on weekdays, while Musk gets them every other weekend and holidays. Yeah, it's kind of funny that they're kind of couching this as a breakup when, it's simply just his service has run its course. Legally, it's run its course. So he's on out. But some people believe, especially since Elon Musk is now bashing the big, beautiful bill, some have noticed that Trump is taking a few pot shots at Elon Musk. And this one here, as reported by the Babylon Bee, fake news that you can trust. Trump torches Tesla dealership. Trust me, if he were doing that, they would lose their minds. And now this last one. All right, this one, I have to admit, I really kind of thought, I had to think twice whether or not I was going to use this one, but it's just too funny. Some of y'all out there are probably going to be mad at me for this one, but it's okay. This one right here, you may know that Pete Hegseth, at the very beginning of Pride Month, decided that they are going to rename the USS Harvey Milk, and the name that they've chosen, once again, according to the Babylon Bee, USS No homo. Yeah, I know. Is that kind of offensive? It can be kind of offensive, but it is funny. No more funny than this one right here. Uh this one right here I thought was hysterical when I saw it on Kill Tony. For those of you who do not watch Kill Tony, he is not politically correct, but he is funny. And this is Seth MacFarlane. This is probably the sort of comedy that got Seth MacFarlane kicked off of Saturday Night Live.
Trump, I got a question. You on your debate the other day, you said illegal immigrants are taking black jobs. What the fuck are black jobs?
The illegal immigrants are being extremely loud on buses. They are all types of stuff that we said this used to be blacks. Remember when this was blacks and we liked it when they were black because they could dance and they were fun. And now the people that are Mexican are not fun.
Yeah, okay, that's funny. I don't care who you are, and I'm black, so I guess I get to play that joke, right? Since I am black, I don't know. If Mike were here, I would blame it all on Mike. You'd send him to, I would just have him sent to racial sensitivity training. But anyway, Mike's not here. I'm here, so that one right there is all my fault. If you're offended, sorry, not sorry. Because as I've always said, when it comes to comedy, whether it's offensive or not, I just have one rule. It's got to be funny, and that's funny. By the way, Kill Tony, you can watch. You have a season of it. Actually, it's something they've been doing for a while, but you can actually watch it on Netflix. I would just warn you, if you are sensitive, it's probably not for you. If that joke offended you, Kill Tony's not for you. Just saying. And by the way, everybody has an opportunity to be offended on Kill Tony. I don't care if you're white, black, if you're straight, gay, lesbian. I don't care if you are Asian, if you are Latino, if you are white, if you are Republican or Democrat. You will be offended by something on Kill Tony. And that is what I love about it. Because you know what? We're all equal. Anyway. Let's go ahead and wrap up the show with one last quick shout out to our sponsors, starting with Hitman Industries, rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase at hitmanindustries.net. The California Republican Assembly, the conscience of the Republican Party. Find them at cragop.org. And then you've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com. And then finally, you can find all things tactical except the gun at uscombatgear.com. That's going to go ahead and wrap up today's program. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and encouraging your friends to do the same. We will be back tomorrow on Free For All Friday, and I think we're going to be celebrating Wear Orange Day. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Where we're going to celebrate all of the anti-gunners out there who are wearing orange. So if you're watching, if you want to tune in, if you want to go ahead, DM us, let us know if there's any particular politician who's wearing orange you would like us to highlight. Go ahead and hit us up in the DM. You can go ahead and email me at craig@craigdeluz.com as well. Anyway, y'all have fun, stay safe, and we will see you mañana.